Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Marikita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 by Pastor Frank Hoffman and his first wife, Mary, and launched as the pioneer website in the United States for faith based animal rights veganism. Today, led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we exist for all people seeking current animal rights vegan resources and offer decades of free animal rights and vegan content, including a huge repository of vegan sermons and Bible commentaries, animal rights strategies, free vegan authored books, recipes, upcoming events around the world, and the works of various vegan authors, poets, and artists. We host current sites for almost 20 vegan and animal rights organizations, including Stop Crush, Unparalleled Suffering, and the Committee to Abolish Sports Hunting. We also maintain nearly 25 archival sites from animal rights vegan activism of past decades. The bottom line is that we work to unite compassionate and empathetic humans across the globe from the past and present who honor the dignity of each and every creature so that all beings thrive on a flourishing planet Earth. So today I'm very excited to welcome Aidan Kankyoku. Aidan is the strategy lead for Pro Animal Future. Spending 10 years as an organizer and researcher in the grassroots wing of the animal movement led Aidan to launch Pro Animal Future in 2023 with his longtime colleague, Eva Hamer, with the goal of galvanizing a new wave of political campaigns for animals. So, everyone that's watching, please let us know where you're joining from, and we're going to be having a Q&A. If you have any questions at the end, please put them in the chat because we're going to find out how to take action today. So, welcome, Aidan. Thank you for joining us.
Excited to be here. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we always start out just by hearing a little bit of our guest's vegan journey. When did you become vegan, and how and what led you to make that transition?
Yeah. The kind of formative experience that I look back on as key turning point. I'm sure that I'd seen, footage from factory farms before that. My sister was vegetarian, and I think she'd sent me some PD videos or whatever. But when I was 12, I was on a trip in rural Ontario with my family, and my dad brought me with him to this rural butcher shop. I don't really know what he was thinking, but the two things that I really remember about that experience were the first was getting out of the car and being hit by the smell, and just immediately thinking, oh, that's not, that doesn't smell like food. It smells really ominous. And I think that scent kind of just taps often into something really visceral and intuitive for us. So that kind of set the stage for me. And then we walk in, and it's a typical butcher shop, glass display case in the front with cuts of meat for sale. But then there's a bay door that's open, and you can see into the back of the business. And there's a cow hanging up by a hook through her back leg. All her skin's removed. I mean, she's dead at this point, but kind of that halfway point between a living animal and cuts of meat for sale, ready for sale, that I knew at this point as a 12-year-old that meat was from animals and that different types of meat were from different species of animals, but somehow that, more visceral, seeing that connection point really clicked something for me, and I never ate animals again after that.
Wow, well, that's great. I love to hear that you were so young to make the connection, because some of us take forever to make the connection, and that's the journey. So,
and well, I'm sure you've seen all these videos of kids online where it's like actually probably a lot of us did have that experience of understanding early on, and then it gets kind of beaten out of you by parents and society, and that doesn't accept that compassion. So it's reconnecting for most of us.
You're right. It is reconnecting, because as children we wouldn't be chasing down cows or pigs to eat. So yeah, it is reconnecting. And what did your family think about this? What did you tell them then?
My family was reasonably supportive in the sense that they didn't make it harder for me, but my dad definitely teased me relentlessly for years and years about it, which, as painful as that often was, and I think like many people, I had the experience of I deeply cared about vegetarianism and animals. I wasn't vegan yet, but I didn't have the, I didn't know anyone else who cared about that, and so it was very isolating. And I got to a point where I was pretty apologetic to most people, basically reassuring them, oh, it's just a personal choice, and you do whatever you want to do, because I knew that if I didn't, the social cost would be so kind of severe, so much teasing just for making the choice, much less advocating for it.
And what about going to school? That must have been hard as a child.
I don't remember it being. I mean, I don't remember getting particularly a lot of ridicule. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, which is the kind of place that this is a lot less shocking than it might be in a lot of other places. So it wasn't too bad. I can't complain, to be honest.
Well, that's good to hear. And so now, do you have, I mean, how's your family? Have any of them gone vegetarian or vegan or friends?
Yeah, I've gotten two of my siblings and my mom pretty much on board. My sister now is a very committed animal activist. So yeah, feels good.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So, how does the peace of not eating creatures manifest in your life today?
Well, I am very lucky to be able to have animal advocacy as my primary focus in the world. What I spend, many hours a day doing. And outside of that, that's an interesting the way you frame that question, because I can't help but think sometimes that for myself it might be better if I could just, the ignorance is bliss, if I could just wave my hand and forget everything that I've learned and not be kind of tormented by knowing how dire the situation is for animals, and so many other, of course, things. And I don't know, I look around, I think a lot of people that I grew up with, friends or family, are pretty aimless, and I feel grateful to have a really clear sense of purpose, why I'm getting out of bed every day. So I'm not sure. Peace, yeah, it's peace is a choice word.
Yeah, yeah. I see how sometimes it would probably be more peaceful if you don't know. I mean, like, I just took a class and learned things that I didn't really know about. Um, Racism and the depths of it, and I thought, gosh, it sure was nice, but I didn't know all this. Now it's like all of a sudden, my eyes are open and I see it everywhere. But I mean, yeah, so the peaceful word is, it's interesting when we look at things. Is it better to be asleep or is it better to be awakened? But I mean, the talking about your sense of purpose and the ikigai is the Japanese term. I think Japanese term for that. Waking up every morning, and that's what the people in the blue zones have, that live the longest. That ikigai, a sense of purpose, and so many of us don't have that. And I think that they're not feeling fulfilled, and that's what this purchasing of things, material objects, trying to fill that need. So it is a blessing when we know why we are here. I know I feel the same way. I know exactly why I'm here, to be a voice for animals and the planet, and you know why you're here, and that really, it fulfills our soul to be centered and grounded in what we believe in, which is beautiful.
Yeah, of course, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yes. So, what's your most memorable experience as a vegan so far?
Huh, well, I've been lucky to have some pretty wild adventures in animal advocacy. I first got involved in the movement in 2014 through a campus club. I mean, I'd been vegetarian for about 7 years. I was studying music at the University of Colorado, and I stumbled pretty much by chance into a meeting of the vegan club at CU Boulder, which was the first time I'd really ever met any other people who had this kind of conviction. And it was a pretty, I didn't realize how much I needed that, and how, of course, to some extent, I just never, I had no real awareness that there was a movement at this point. I just felt very lonely. I had, once I'd gotten to college and started to become more aware of the industry, but also just be out of my parents' house and have, be in charge of my own food. I mean, I was eating at the dining halls, and University of Colorado had very easy vegan options, so that made it very easy. And that was when I kind of stopped eating milk and eggs and things like that. But then I just sank into a pretty dark period, feeling, again, just totally isolated from even the friends that I was spending a lot of time with at that point, just seeing that no one else cared about these kinds of things. And finding other people who did actually care and were trying to do something about it, trying to figure out what to do about it. I think at that time it was 6 of us who met in a basement room of the physics building once a week and just talked about how messed up the world is and how helpless we felt about it. But we inspired each other to try to figure out a way to make a difference. And we all ended up attending this big conference together in 2015, what used to be called the Animal Rights National Conference, which was kind of this, more, at the time, I think it was a lot more cross-sectional of the movement, a lot of grassroots, a lot of professionals, a lot of every sort of different corner coming together. And it was 1,500 people in a big hotel in Washington, D.C. And I, went from, oh my gosh, it was amazing to know 6 people who cared about this, to it just swept me off my feet. And I knew that weekend, absolutely, that I wanted to dedicate my life to animal advocacy. And then the last talk that I heard at that conference was a gentleman named Wayne Shung, who was the founder of Direct Action Everywhere, which is a group known for, a pretty bold sort of confrontational approach to activism, especially at the time. The signature thing that DXE was most known for was these disruptions where we would go inside of restaurants and grocery stores where people are buying meat and not, screaming, not angrily, but speak up and bring attention to the fact that those were animals who had wanted to live and had their own, purpose for living. So yeah, and out of that came all kinds of other, just an orientation towards opportunistic disruption. And I say that in the best possible way, trying to get media attention to the cause and just force people to think about this thing that vast majority of people do feel uncomfortable about, and, manage that discomfort by just shoving it away. So I, ran on stage with presidential candidates trying to get attention to animal rights, and I've done all kinds of, ran on a baseball field and all kinds of other things, been arrested a bunch of times doing kind of goofy stuff. And I think, that whole, especially those first kind of few years that I was in the movement, I so believed that we had the approach that was going to work. And I felt so much hope and motivation, and felt so close to the other people who were doing that work. So it was a really wonderful time.
Oh, that's very interesting. Can we see any of these videos? I mean, where are they? If we want.
Some of them, thankfully, have vanished into posterity. Yeah, I'm sure if you can go onto my Facebook page and dig back into the past, you'll see lots of disruptions and stuff. Yeah, we used to, especially, I mean, it was almost this, I think it was such a wonderful one element of it was this amazing personal growth challenge to where we had this culture of solo disruptions where you just go alone inside of a grocery store or restaurant when you're on your way home and just do a speak out inside that, bringing attention to the animals there, which for most people, including myself, was not at all easy or comfortable, and getting comfortable just breaking social norms in that way and saying, okay, it was the opposite of that phase I was describing earlier as a young sort of apologetic vegetarian, where I had my beliefs, but I was just so beaten down by how fringe they were that I wouldn't even speak up, wouldn't even advocate for them, to go to the point where, even on my own, I'm willing to just violate some pretty strong social norms that you don't walk into a grocery store and just start speaking loudly about how messed up it is that we're doing this to animals. It was profoundly liberating.
It sounds like it. Is that a bird I hear in the background?
Yeah, I've got a parrot behind me. She's not my one of my housemates mainly takes care of her, but she's home with me all day, so I've gotten to know her very well. She'll probably make an appearance at some point here.
Okay, I was wondering what's going on. So, all good. So, when you go in there, and if you're doing the disruptions, now are you going to? What's the chance of getting arrested? How does that? How do you work do this so you don't get arrested, or will you get arrested? How does that work?
Yeah, most of the time the idea is to just be in there long enough to get your statement across and then leave before the police come. It's been a while since I did this kind of stuff. Even DXE, Direct Action Rear, has moved away from that tactic, which sometimes I think is too bad. But there's other groups using those kind of disruptive pressure campaign tactics, although they're using it a little bit differently. Most of the time that I got arrested, most of the times I've been arrested for animal advocacy, which is about half a dozen. I knew, it was intentional. I said, okay, this time we're gonna stay around, and this is part of the strategy is to heighten the media coverage by being able to say, oh, so X number of people were arrested, and people appreciate that sacrifice. Although sometimes it's gotten so routine to get arrested for protests, the cops are there and they're just like, okay, you guys want to get arrested? All right, here we go. And that's one thing that's, made me, scenarios like that was one of the many things that made me start to yearn for something a little bit different.
Right, and it seems like we just I don't know what works anymore, but that does work. It does work. I guess there's no guarantee for any of it, but it's always tricky, and knowing. But I think it doesn't matter as long as you're doing the best you can. That's what counts. Taking action is really what. Yeah.
I still very much believe that there's a lot to be said for disruption, like disrupting the status quo in some really profoundly disruptive way. And we see that throughout many different social movements that played an important role. But I think the lesson is that each movement needs to reinvent what that looks like, because once one movement has achieved a win using a certain style of disruption, that kind of just gets integrated into the system, and it becomes, it's no longer really very genuinely disruptive, say, to do a sit-in inside of some CEO's office. So and so many of us in the social movement space look to the US civil rights movement as this uniquely inspiring model, because from among many other reasons, the way that they kind of synthesized disruption with what we might call direct action, that the fact that the lunch counter sit-ins were at the same time as being very disruptive, they were also just symbolically exactly what they were asking for, right? They're just saying, we want to integrate we want to integrate society and not have separate lesser spaces for people of color. And so by acting that out, it was so disruptive, but it was so hard to say that there was anything wrong with what they were doing. It was so not aggressive at the same time. So we ask, what does that look like for animal advocates? What's the action that we want to be able to take to say that we live in a world that is compassionate to animals, that doesn't have and I think open rescue is the closest our movement has come to that, but that's a long tangent, so maybe that's not actually what we're here to talk about.
No, we're here just to have a conversation. So with the disruption, when you say different forms of disruption, what are different forms of disruption?
Well, it could be, anything that takes the normal routine proceedings of day-to-day society and shakes them up and says, oh wait, no, you're not. Basically the fact that, as we said before, so many people feel uncomfortable about what happens to animals in factory farms, and they deal with that by just totally ignoring it and pushing it aside. And how can we make it impossible to ignore? Basic things that movements use, like blocking roads, big marches that block roads and stop traffic. Suddenly, everyone has to deal with the fact that this movement is here and that people are upset about something. Disrupting inside of businesses, sit-ins or chaining yourself to lock some door shut. All these kinds of, that's kind of the general realm of civil disobedient disruptive tactics.
All right. Well, I did do a protest at the circus where with PETA, and they chained themselves, and the traffic was having to go around, and people were mad, and and these guys were saying, you're going to jail, telling us we were going to jail, but PETA had said, you're not going to jail. But we did not go to jail.
There you
They knew what they were doing. And those two people that were chaining themselves, they knew they were going to jail. So yeah, and it was on the news, and so that was very interesting. But no, I was nervous, definitely scared, nervous, heightened sense of feelings. And, but I felt, of course, I was very happy to do it. And even doing this, I would be open to doing the disruptions where you go in and are more vocal in stores. I just haven't, I think there was a few here, but it hasn't been the right time. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I guess it depends. I'm juggling many things, so you never know. But I'm glad y'all are doing, I'm glad you're doing your part. We're all doing our part here. And then if you're not doing your part and you want some ideas, these are ideas, and um, how to how to be an advocate, activist for animals, and you can do it quietly, you can do it loudly, but please do it.
Well, as I mentioned, my work these days actually looks pretty different than that. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me ask you this: if someone's watching that's a new vegan and they were feeling feeling very sad with despair and isolated, what would you suggest to them?
And the first thing you absolutely have to do is connect with the movement and the community. And almost anywhere you are, I can almost guarantee that there are people out there in your area who care about this. And there's a good chance that they're, at least meeting up, doing kind of potlucks or meetups. Look on meetup.com, seek out, those little community groups. And if you're in a bigger city, then there's a lot more than that happening. It's, I think people always ask, well, what can I do as an individual? The number one thing, you got to stop being an individual. You're not going to be able to sustain your focus and momentum and your personal drive to resist these really strong social norms on your own. It's got to be with other people. I wouldn't be able to do this after 10 years if I didn't have a really strong community around me. So that's step one.
And that's a great advice for just life. You don't want to be alone. We need a community.
Yeah.
We need people. We need support. So yes, definitely. I love it.
For me, the first time being around that really, radical community, it was like, a flower opening in my mind in terms of how much I could actually, it was, I'd had these beliefs that what's happening to animals is horrifically wrong. But there was this doubt, like, well, if I'm the only one thinking this, maybe I'm crazy. And and I didn't really believe that, but there was this part of me that couldn't really lean into and let this actually confront the sort of full implications of these beliefs until I was surrounded by other people who share them.
Right. And yeah, I was hearing someone talking about these are my people. And it really made me think about the people that I surround myself with. And, it made me feel very thankful that I have them, because as a, I think any vegan can understand, relate to the feeling as an outsider or someone weird. I mean, here it goes again. I'm going to the potluck, or I'm going to hang out with other people that are not vegan yet. Um, it's funny. It's just it's continually challenging to say. If you have to say it, maybe you don't have to say I'm vegan, but a lot of times I do say it. So I'm proud to say it. I don't. There's that delicateness about saying it without try. People get so offended when they hear it. So however you can relate it where it's not offensive or it doesn't immediately put people on the defense.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a journey, veganism, learning how to navigate it. But it's wonderful. I wouldn't change anything. So, all right. Well, now let me hear about Pro Animal Future. And you founded Pro Animal Future. Tell us about this, and when did you found it?
Yeah, so a bit of the backstory. Mentioned that I grew up in the movement with this group Direct Action Everywhere. And more than while I think we were most known for those confrontational disruptions, our theory of change was a little more complicated. And we we're really looking to these big mass protest events as sort of the North Star that we were working towards. Like Occupy Wall Street had happened a few years before. I think that for a lot of us at that time, we would have said that's the kind of thing that we want to make happen for animals, just a big mass protest event for animals. And we thought that, the way we would build up to that is by doing, having a culture of disruptive protest, and then using those disruptions to, attract attention and draw new people into the movement, and just kind of incrementally grow up until the point that we would hit that sort of tipping point. And over a few years, kind of had to accept that that wasn't the trajectory we were on. Like we were seeing kind of stagnation in the growth of the movement, and running into the same challenges and limits to growth year after year. So after several years of that and kind of trying everything I could think of within that context, decided with a couple of colleagues that I'd met through DXE to step back from sort of frontline activism and focus on some research pathways that we'd identified that we thought could help us identify, ways around those same challenges, and a new kind of strategy for the grassroots wing of the movement to either be able to continue to sort of grow exponentially, or if not, to be able to make a bigger impact with the number of people we had. That's Squawks' feet walking around.
Aww.
Yeah, here's Squawks.
How cute.
So we stepped back and we started this project called Pax Fauna, which was a research project. And among other things, probably our biggest piece of research was focused on sort of public opinion, messaging, understanding like where why wasn't our message landing with the public better when we see that, people are pretty horrified about what happens in factory farms. There was some specific survey data that we were really interested in, from kind of the last decade, where you can, hey, that's okay. You can ask a group of people, if they would support, say, a ban on slaughterhouses or a ban on factory farms, and you get really high support, like 48% of people saying they would support a ban on factory farms, or 36% across the nation saying they would support a ban on slaughterhouses. But then in the same survey sample, you ask, well, 98% of people will say whether to be vegetarian is a personal choice, and no one should tell me what they think I should do. So when we first encountered this, I think for a lot of animal activists, it's this really frustrating disconnect. If you're saying you have a problem with factory farming, but you're going to keep patronizing factory farms. So we wanted to kind of understand more what was going on under the hood when people were giving these same responses. And we designed a kind of study involving a lot of focus groups and interviews. In the end, it was about 200 hours of extended interview conversations with normal meat-eating Americans. And what we kind of found was that, that the consumer lens that the movement's been focused on up until now, of framing it in terms of this individual choice that, go vegetarian, go vegan, is kind of where people are most antagonistic to what we have to say. So they feel that consumer role, when we're playing the role of a consumer, it has these really strong values of personal choice and autonomy. No one can tell me what to do, and there's this kind of edge to it too as well, which is a sense of futility, that I'm just one person. Whether I buy meat or not doesn't make a difference. So why am I going to be the one to go make a big sacrifice? Stop eating this thing, pay at the social price that I've seen my friends of. If someone goes vegetarian, everyone mocks them. I don't want to be that person. It's a really big ask, but it's more than the finding the food. It's the social cost, right? So people don't want to do that. But if we can shift to a different kind of lens of looking, if we can get our engagement with the public to take place through what we call a civic lens, or a political kind of space, that's a role as a voter rather than as a consumer, where people are much more willing to think about what kind of world do I want to create, and what, like, we're taking collective action. It's not all going to fall on me, but if everyone does a big, take a small step together rather than me alone having to take a really big step all at once. So we identified that kind of the need to create that shift, and right away from that, we recognized ballot initiatives as this sort of unique opportunity in the US legal system. Only about half of states allow this, where any group of citizens can get together, write a law, and collect some signatures, get that law placed on the ballot. And if 50% of people plus one vote for it on election day, it passes, it becomes law. And besides, which we can talk about more, being an effective way to get laws passed, this was the way to shift our engagement with the public into the political realm, where we can put animal rights questions directly in front of people as voters and ask, okay, you say you oppose factory farming, but you don't want to, be the one to have to go vegetarian. Well, here's your chance. Like, now you can actually make this happen at the social level.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, that's something that I don't know that much about the political system, as much as I'd like to know. But that's a great way to take action if you're in the right states. Then,
Right.
right. I don't know if I'm in
Unfortunately
the right
restricted.
state.
Yeah. What state are you?
I'm in Georgia.
Yeah, no ballot measures in Georgia. Sorry, that's unfortunate.
Okay. Well, darn it. Well, at least I don't feel so ignorant about it, but like I'm missing out. But anyway, yeah, that's good to know. I mean, it's it's a learning process. So, um, all right. And so I like the name Pro Animal Future. It sounds a lot. I mean, most people would say, "Well, I'm pro animal."
Exactly, and it's obviously it's a bit structurally, it's a reference to sort of pro-choice, pro-life, whatever. Like, that's the way that we talk about issues when we're talking about them politically, rather than saying, "Oh, I'm vegetarian," which describes something very much about my consumption habits, or very personal. Being pro, this as you say, there's a pro-animal movement. Like, I'm pro-animal is this political stance. So that's exactly what we're trying to. And then I think with future, sort of point to the fact that this is going to be a gradual transition. It's not something I think people get hung up on. Another thing that was kind of preventing our message from coming across in the past is that people see factory farming as just so deeply rooted and intractable, and not a problem that there's a solution to. And we, as a movement, have maybe fallen short of really communicating a clear vision to people about how that transition could look from where we are right now to a world with no animal farming, or a world with much smaller scale of animal farming.
Right, and we still have people that believe we have to eat animals.
Right.
So, there's a lot of things to navigate there. And what about people that you've talked to, and have any of them just said, "Well," I mean, have you ever had like these people that are like, "Okay, I'm going to be giving up eating animals"?
So maybe coming to that a bit roundabout, we set up Pro Animal Future for the point of pursuing this strategy, so using ballot initiatives to put really kind of bold animal rights questions in front of the public as voters, start to get people used to animal rights being a political issue, and eventually that can lead to, it can ripple out, and it can affect even in places that don't have ballot initiatives, and start inserting this into the political process. And so we launched Pro Animal Future in early 2023, and just finished our sort of first pilot campaign, which was in Denver, Colorado. It was a pair of ballot initiatives, one to ban fur sales and one to ban slaughterhouses in the city of Denver, which would have shut down the largest lamb slaughterhouse in the country. And while neither measure was successful in terms of passing on election day, we did go from, the way that I think of it is just by kind of reframing the issue. We went from, say, in Denver, maybe 5 to 10% of people are vegetarian or vegan, if that. But it could be less, but being generous, somewhere between 5 and 10%. We went from that being the number of supporters that the movement has, to 36% of people who voted to ban slaughterhouses. So most of those people, are eating meat every day, but they voted to ban industrial slaughterhouses. I mean, it would ban all slaughterhouses in the city of Denver. I think that's huge. For the first time that we've done something like this, it shows the potential of shifting. Like, if we can, just that jump. We've 7x'd our base among the public. I think that's a great foundation from which to grow. And I think we actually accomplished that by shifting away from having the conversation be about okay, are you going to go vegan right now, or are you going to be supporting a big political movement that might result in the long term in the same thing? If we banned even just factory farming, the scale of animal farming would be so small that most people would almost never have the chance to eat meat. So.
Well, yeah, because people don't even know what's inside a slaughterhouse, most people, and they don't know that it's illegal to film. And I don't even know when those laws came into effect. Do you?
Well, so the ag laws, kind of happened state by state. A lot of them have now been overturned, so it's not, but there's other kind of ways that they can get punish activists for trying to expose the reality of what happens. And I will say I was kind of surprised in the campaign in Denver how many people seemed fairly oblivious about what happens in modern factory farms and slaughterhouses. Although I think most people were somewhat aware that it was problematic or that there was something happening there that doesn't line up with their values. We would, while we're canvassing people, and I had conversations with a lot of voters in Denver, some of the activists that I work with, talked probably to thousands of people. The most common response would be something like, well, I'm a little torn on this issue because on the one hand, I know that there's really messed up stuff that happens inside factory farms. But on the other hand, I do eat meat and I'm not really trying to stop eating meat. And then through a bit of a conversation, we could get people to a place of sort of totally accepting, if we can make this transition happen gradually and everyone has to do it, and, that by virtue of everyone doing it, what food is available changes, and, it's easier to find plant-based food. Like, of course, that would be a better world. Like, of course, it would be better if we could have a world where we didn't have to raise and kill animals in these, industrial factory farms and slaughterhouses anymore.
Right. Well, how has your organization been growing over the years?
Well, so Pax Fauna sort of incubated and spun out Pro Animal Future, and they sort of exist together today with this close relationship. The first year we had 3 people, and 2 of them were getting paid $30,000 a year, and I was living off of pandemic unemployment benefits. So that was, our nice kind of scrappy startup days. Our budget's essentially doubled every year since then, and now coming out of the pilot campaign in Denver, which fundamentally I consider a huge success, and very promising in terms of what we can do with this approach. We're planning to expand into now 3 cities across the country, and just to continue to sort of develop that model. And hopefully by the 2028 or 2030 election cycles, we can really just roll this out and anywhere there's a community around the country that wants to use this strategy to put really bold pro-animal policies on the agenda and sometimes get a win, but also just drive the conversation forward. We can help them, we can provide kind of all the tools they need to do that. So, but right now we're going to be in Denver and outside of Portland, Oregon. So anyone in Portland can get involved. And then we're sort of settling on what our 3rd location is going to be. It might be Washington, D.C. We don't know yet.
Okay. Well, how has your role as a founder changed over time?
Changes every day. I don't think I ever do the same thing 2 days in a row. I'm responsible for anything that falls through the cracks. So there's never a dull moment. I think the thing that I most love about what I'm doing is that I think that we have a chance to make a real impact. But one of the things that I like more on the personal level about the role that I have is that I feel like it just uses every capability that I have. Like, I'm just, no part of me, I get to the end of the day and I'm like, yeah, I took everything that I had to, maybe not every day, but every week or every month. They just have to constantly, we are learning new skills, learning figuring out things that none of us have ever done before. I work with an amazing team, and it's just a delight. So,
Great. That's good to hear. And so, how can people get a hold of your organization?
proanimal.org is an easy way to find us. If you're interested in getting involved, if you go to proanimal.org, there's a get involved button. And even if you're not in any of the places I just listed, it is possible to, especially as we get closer to elections. But even right now, we're thinking, well, so as we get closer to elections, we do a lot of remote voter outreach. So you can phone bank with us or write postcards to voters from wherever you are. And even right now, we're looking at doing a little sort of post-election research, probably calling Denver voters to understand more what influenced them and what of our communications channels were most effective. So right now, you can get involved and help out from anywhere.
Yeah, I phone banked and I was scared at first, but then it was pretty easy, I mean, so I just don't be scared, everybody. I mean, I think it's what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, I think it's all good, but nevertheless, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people, if you've experienced doing any kind of outreach, whether it's on phones, I mean, phones is probably the least scary compared to knocking on doors or being just in crowded downtown places like video outreach that a lot of activist groups today do. You get over so much of your sort of fear and social anxiety, just getting rejected regularly, or occasionally have a great conversation and meet someone 5 minutes. You're getting into some really deep stuff about animals. For me, that's translated into so much more confidence in my normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I knocked on doors during election time, and I was scared, but I did it. It wasn't so bad. Just like the phone bank, I was scared at first, but but it was good. I had great conversations with people. Someone did. It looked like she was made like a symbol of throwing up, whatever, and but that was pretty much the worst. Nobody was rude to me, and it was all up to me which doors. If I didn't feel comfortable, I didn't have to knock on the door. So, it was a good experience, and I was happy that I did it. I did it more than once, and so it builds up your confidence, and
And I think, one lesson over time for me is friends and family are actually kind of the hardest to advocate to, and because there's all this, they see you the way that they see you, or they, especially family, they have this image of you of when you were a kid or whatever it is. And so there's so many, but so practicing on strangers is actually the easy mode. Just okay, if the conversation goes terribly, great, you walk away, you're never going to see that person again. You got a total reset. So I think it's a great place to learn those communication skills and then actually take those back to your stronger relationships, where maybe over time you have more influence over people.
I think you're right. Definitely. I've given up on family. The worst. I mean, I feel like the more I try to, appeal to family, the worse it's going to be. So I just say nothing and let someone else, hopefully, let life take its course. I think life sometimes gets people to change their eating habits. So I see some comments that we have. If you have any questions, let me know. But here's one from Johnny Rose. Honestly, we need to reach out to religious folks. I tried at church. It was a nightmare. Even lost a wife over it. And I think we're talking about advocating.
Yeah, well, I'll just quickly shout out our friends in the UK at Animal Rising just launched this program. They've been, I think, lining up some of the coolest initiatives in the movement year after year for the last few years. And so they started with this plant-based universities program where the organization was helping kind of identify a few people at any given university who wanted to work on this campaign, and then put together these campaigns to sort of organize students to pressure the university to adopt fully plant-based dining halls, or at least get the student union to vote to have, for the cantinas that they have authority over to become fully plant-based. And it's just scaled very well and sort of tapped into some of these social network dynamics that tight social groups like a university have, and they've just expanded that program to churches. So they're just launching a plant-based churches program where they're going to basically help anyone who's sort of looking for people who are members of churches who are interested in getting support to kind of run an effective, friendly campaign to get the members of the church, and eventually, maybe get some kind of policy at the church level that official functions will be plant-based or default veg or whatever that's going to look like. I don't know the exact details. And I'm sure it would change, place by place. What do you think is like realistic for the church community that you're working with? But I think, as much as I'm sure a lot of us who have tried in your religious communities have probably gotten a lot of pushback, it does still feel like those communities are really ripe for wrestling with this stuff. And I think if we just got to keep trying, and we're going to figure out the right approach. So that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a challenge, that's for sure. I go to Unity North, and the founders were plant based, which I'm very happy to say. And but I mean, sometimes I feel like an outsider, of course. But I'm lucky that I'm the leader of the animal ministry, because I use that as a I say, that animal ministry can't, the leader of the animal ministry can't be eating animals. So, I mean, of course, that makes sense. But anyway, I love the people there, and they are working hard. I know that there is interest in eating plant based, or I don't know if, I mean, more plants. They just don't know how to do it, a lot of them. So we're really working at my church to do that. But I really feel that pain for people that, for Johnny Rose, who said he lost his wife over it. And, we've all been there, I'm sure.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You said the founders of your church were plant-based, but it
And
hasn't really trickled out to the
well,
congregation.
I guess that part was left out. I mean, it was like after the founders, I think by one of the children, like the sons, took that part out of it.
Yeah.
So, which is, unfortunate. So, but I actually did read, I do say that to Healthy Living Group. I'm a leader of Healthy Living Group and the animal ministry, and I do tell them what the founders did say. So it's just going along with the church. So I'm very lucky there, blessed to be able to say that. So
Maybe one of us has to found our own church. That'll be reset the plant-based norm.
yes, I know, huh? Well, I think one of the sons of it was Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the founders of Unity, and I guess one of their sons, I think, has a Fillmore church now. I don't remember who told me, but someone just told me this week, and I meant to check it out online. Fillmore. So, but anyway, yeah, there's and in All Creatures, Pastor Frank Hoffman is the founder, and Tams. She recently got our executive director, Tams Nicholson. She recently um, got her certificate. Well, that's not I don't know what the right way to say it is. A Franciscan. She became did what she needed to do, the certification, I guess, to become a Franciscan. So we do have people that are really trying, and I would really would love to reach out to the Jains, Jains religion, how they really respect all animals. And yeah, but there's that, it's not an alignment of love. And if you're at a church and they're saying love, then how is this, how are factory farms in alignment with love? I don't know, but here's what Johnny's saying. Psalms 145:9. God has compassion for all that he created. This literally means that God is laying there alongside his creation, sharing in their suffering, exactly like Jesus on the cross. Yes, and what church do you go to, Johnny? Um, but I mean, I think in all major religions, it's the same. I mean, the same foundation of love, treating your neighbor as yourself, being compassionate. So you would think, oh, well, if everybody was following that, then we wouldn't have any issues. But
Yeah, I maybe sort of tying two threads together here. I think I find myself asking, what could we do in how we frame the issue, not only of why we should care about animals, but also what it's going to look like to act to help animals in a way that can get some of these church communities on board. Is there coming from my own lens? I mean, I think we've gotten so excited about ballot initiatives because it just gives us sort of carte blanche to define kind of the battleground for for the how this issue is framed, and say, okay, we can propose a policy and say, what's the law that we could propose that offers additional protections to farmed animals, or sets a new threshold for companies that are farming animals that is really could be potentially very disruptive to some of these industries that, for instance, religious communities, or at least some religious communities, could get behind, in not just as individuals but as a block, where you're going to have everyone saying, oh yeah, this is just a no-brainer extension of our, that at least animals deserve this much protection.
Yeah, I mean, some things you think are no brainers, and like I took a little dog that was just appealing to this minister in a different church when I was younger. That there was a little dog that had been hurt and found, and I asked him to make an announcement, but he was too busy. And I thought, what the heck? How could you be? I feel like that's a no brainer. You would ask, has anyone's dog been hurt? We have a lost dog here, or a hurt dog. Take what, 10 seconds? Nope, didn't do it. I think that might have been the last time I went to that church.
Yeah.
I was just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
It's a
it's
puzzle.
hard to wrap your head around, isn't it?
Definitely.
But so what do you envision for the future of your organization, or what do you see happening in the next few years?
Well, I would say in a sort of abstract qualitative sense, our mission is to make animal rights, and especially around farmed animals used for food, um, to see that become a mainstream political issue in the United States, where, in the way that elected officials have to list out their platform, candidates for office have to list out their platforms on all these different things, we want to see animal farming become one of those topics. It's not going to become the main, most hotly debated political issue in the country anytime soon necessarily, and maybe we can win a lot without achieving that. So I think an example that I look at, which realistically, our cause is a lot more disruptive than this and asks a lot more, so I don't think it's going to be this graceful, but the cannabis legalization campaign over the last 50 years, the first cannabis legalization ballot initiative was proposed in California in the 70s, and it failed. And then there was a smattering of them over the next few decades. Starting in 1998, every election year, so every even year, through 2012, there was cannabis legalization on the ballot in at least one state around the country, and often in more than one, two or three. And it was 2012 was the first time that any of those passed successfully. So it was, they used these campaigns to put the issue on the agenda, start to familiarize the public, start to drive forward this debate, and all those, campaigns that lost on election day, we look back and we say, oh, that was the strategy. That's how they got to the point where now majority of Americans support this, and many states are, have acted on it either through ballot initiative process or through traditional legislation. That's a very similar path to the one that we're pursuing now. We just want to force this onto the agenda, force people to confront this issue that, again, most people have this somewhere in the back of their minds, and there's real discomfort with what's happening to animals, but they can just ignore it. And so we want to make it much harder for people to ignore it, get to the point where it's a mainstream issue that people think of as, not only something that they care about, but something that they expect to be discussed in a political context. Whereas, right now, maybe it's something, animals in general is something people care about, but they don't think of animals as, being in the magisterium of politics. So from there, what's that going to look like? We want to work up to statewide campaigns that are targeting factory farming. Right now, we're doing city and county campaigns to sort of build power. It takes a lot more capacity and volunteer base and money to run a statewide campaign. So we're kind of working up towards that. And if we can get to the point where we're running statewide campaigns every election year and just forcing this onto the agenda all over the country, I think we're going to see some pretty exciting stuff.
Well, definitely, we've got to get animals and nature, Mother Nature. I mean, it's all connected into the political sphere, right? Because it wasn't. It's not even there. It seems like.
Right.
And how do we live if we don't have that? If we don't have animals, how are we going to survive as a planet? I mean, we're almost lost to all of them. Um, and people are not even aware of the damage animal agriculture has to the wildlife. They just don't even. I mean, it's not seen, and that's I don't remember who it was that was saying it's because we don't see it. Is the problem. We don't see this on an everyday basis. I mean, we live in our own bubble, and that really is not. I mean, it's very comfortable, isn't it, for us? But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, maybe as an example of this, that people, it's like one thing for people to care about animals, and it's a separate thing for them to be willing to or entertain animals as belonging in politics. We had so many. The Democratic Party came out against both of our ballot measures in Denver this year, so the slaughterhouse ban and the fur ban. So the Democratic Party was like siding with animal abuse, and I think a lot of the individual people in that who voted, and there's about 250 precinct officers who voted to make that decision, and they voted overwhelmingly against us. And I think a lot of those individuals, are people who care about animals. Probably a lot of them are vegetarian, but they just think, when it comes to when you put that up against jobs, which was the opposition's main argument. Closing the slaughterhouse is going to get rid of, it was like 160 jobs, and they're the worst jobs imaginable. But jobs is the economy. That's what we're used to talking about in politics. And so we put all this, we're used to putting value on those things. And it's just so foreign to say, well, how are we going to weigh, 160 jobs against 3,000 lambs every day? 1,500 lambs a day, sorry, excuse me. So it's, they're just not, and this is the process, I think, that by which we are going to get people to be comfortable thinking of animals as political class that deserves consideration through our political process.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a diligent process. So I'm going to show this comment, and let's see here. And Johnny was saying, I belong to Up Wild Church or UP Wild Church. And yes, most of us are vegan, which is great. Meet out in the mountains and rivers, protest environmental causes. Well, that's inspirational. Thanks for sharing that. All right. And so, I'm happy to hear that people are taking action, and thank you for taking action. Now, and let me actually remind everybody of this. Don't forget to go to www.all-creatures.org to check out the hundreds of thousands of pages of free resources updated daily, 7 days a week without break, or sign up for our weekly newsletter, and be sure to search vegan churches on our site to find vegan faith-based resources near you. And if you know of a resource that's not on our list, please reach out to our executive director, Tams, at all-creatures.org. So, Aidan, give us your final thoughts, your final words, and where we can get a hold of you. I mean, where we can, if we need to reach out to you, and if we want to take action with Pro Animal Future, what do we need to do?
Well, I'm on Instagram as the only social that I'm active on, which is relatively new for me, and I'm actually still not very good at staying active there. But Pro Animal Aidan is my handle there. Proanimal.org is, you can easily get in touch with me on there, or paxfauna.org. And I think it's, I don't know how coherent this is going to be, but so I'm active Buddhist practitioner, and when I was actually a major part of when I first transitioned from vegetarian to fully vegan. Had to do with when I was first starting to practice, and for a long time, I so wanted, an integration between those two, between my advocacy and my spiritual practice. And to some extent, I mean, my sangha has a strong vegetarian vegan streak to it, and it's an animal rights perspective is welcome there, which I'm very grateful for. And at the same time, I think there was something very freeing for me to let go of needing those two worlds to be so linked up to each other, and just knowing, on the one hand, the animal movement is obviously going to be this very pluralistic place where, if we try to only be taking action with people who share our kind of faith views, and we're going to be really limiting ourselves beyond an already very limited environment. And on the other, so it's just, I think for me, like kind of, and maybe the path to that, if I know that I'm doing effective work and I have a path for an outlet for advocacy that I really believe in, it makes it so much easier for me to exist in spaces where that's not the norm, knowing that that's kind of because I'm focused on where I think I can actually be most effective. And like you said before, I think it's actually pretty healthy to give up on family at some point and say, well, could I put this amount of energy into, running up against the wall of my family, or I could take that same energy into another place where it may actually be a lot more effective, and then just, try to enjoy my family's company as much as I can.
Well, I love that attitude, and that's something to think about for me too, and just allowing it to be in the Buddhist perspective. I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for coming, and thanks, Johnny Rose, for your comments, and everybody watching. Please subscribe, y'all, and take action, however that looks like, whatever that looks like, and also take breaks for yourself. Have compassion for yourself. So. Well, thanks, everyone. Thank you, Aidan, and good luck with everything. We'll be watching Colorado, Denver.
Yeah, watch Denver, watch Portland, and yeah, really appreciate you having me on, and appreciate all the work all of Frigidaire does. So thank you.
All right, y'all. Bye-bye, everybody.